the Vatican Apostolic Archive. Picture this: 53 linear miles of shelving, 35,000 volumes, 12 centuries of letters, decrees, account books, and state papers. A collection so vast that if you read one document per day, it would take you 1900 years to finish, and you will never, ever be allowed inside. This is the Vatican Apostolic Archive, until 2019 officially called the Secret Archives, and it remains the most restricted collection of historical documents on Earth. The archive was formally established as a separate entity in 1612 by Pope Paul V, though the collection itself dates back to at least the 8th century. Materials were scattered across Rome for centuries until consolidated. In 1810-14, Napoleon Bonaparte seized and transported 3,239 crates of documents to Paris. Many were never returned. Some were destroyed. Others were allegedly used as padding for ammunition during his Russian campaign. The archive was closed to outsiders until 1881, when Pope Leo XIII partially opened it to qualified scholars. But here's what partial means. The archive contains approximately 85 kilometers of shelving, holding documents from the 8th century to present day. Only about 60 scholars per year are granted access, and only to pre-selected documents they request by name. You cannot browse. You must have published academic credentials, letters of recommendation from recognized institutions, and explicit research justification. Documents less than 75 years old are completely off limits, recently reduced from 100 years in 2019. The 1939 Papal Conclave documents were only opened in 2020, 81 years later. In 2012, 100 documents related to the trial of the Knights Templar were released for the first time, 700 years after the trials. The archive employs only about 60 staff members to manage the entire collection. Most materials have never been cataloged in digital form. Among the documents are the 1521 excommunication decree of Martin Luther, the 1633 trial documents of Galileo, and letters from Michelangelo. Pope Leo XIII's 1881 opening was considered revolutionary. But even today, researchers must know the exact document name, date, and shelf location before requesting access. The official story is always the same. Secret was a mistranslation of the Latin secretum, meaning private or personal, as in secretary. The archive contains sensitive diplomatic correspondence, personal papal communications, and materials related to ongoing church governance. Restricted access is necessary to preserve fragile documents and protect privacy of living individuals. The 75-year rule aligns with standard historical archival practice. Modern popes have gradually increased transparency. Benedict XVI opened the Pius XI archives in 2006, and Francis opened the Pius XII archives in 2020, specifically addressing Holocaust-era controversies. But why did it take 700 years to release Templar trial documents? Why were Galileo's trial records kept secret for centuries after his death? And why, when asked about the archive's contents, did Cardinal Jorge Mejia, the former archivist, state in 1998 that there are things that cannot be said? If it's simply an administrative archive, what exactly cannot be said? Some researchers suggest the archive contains documents that would fundamentally challenge the Church's historical narrative. The Templar documents revealed the Pope knew the charges against them were fabricated. What other official histories might collapse under scrutiny? The archive may hold suppressed gospels, evidence of destroyed heresies, documentation of church involvement in political assassinations, or proof of alternative Christian traditions that predate Roman authority. Others point to the Napoleon seizures. What if the most explosive documents were never stolen, but deliberately lost during the chaos? The renaming from secret to apostolic in 2020 occurred suspiciously close to major abuse scandals. Was it a PR move to suggest new transparency while maintaining the same restrictions? From the vaults beneath Rome, we travel east to a tomb that has remained sealed not for decades, but for over 2 millennia. a tomb where opening the doors might mean death. The tomb of Qin Shi Huang, inner chambers. Imagine a 3-story palace buried beneath an artificial mountain. Inside, rivers of mercury flow mechanically across a map of ancient China. Crossbows armed with bronze arrows aim at anyone who breaches the entrance. And at the center, surrounded by treasures, lies the body of the man who unified China and burned every book that challenged his power. This isn't fantasy. This is the tomb of Qin Shi Huang, and the Chinese government has refused to open it for over 2,000 years. In March 1974, farmers digging a well near Xi'an accidentally uncovered fragments of a terracotta warrior. Excavation revealed an army of over 8,000 life-size soldiers, horses, and chariots. But these were only the outer perimeter. Ground-penetrating radar and core samples revealed the actual tomb mound, covering 56 square kilometers, had never been breached. Ancient historian Sima Qian, who lived from 145 to 90 BC, described the tomb's construction in his Records of the Grand Historian, written 100 years after Qin's death. Soil samples taken in the 1980s by archaeologist Duan Qingbo confirmed mercury levels 280 times higher than surrounding areas, exactly matching Sima Qian's description. According to Sima Qian, 700,000 laborers worked on the tomb for 38 years. Most were executed upon completion to preserve its secrets. Ground-penetrating radar and magnetometry studies conducted between 2003 and 2012 revealed a pyramid-like structure 76 meters tall, surrounded by walls and a 400-meter perimeter. The tomb contains an estimated 6,000-plus terracotta figures, though only about 2,000 have been excavated so far, plus bronze chariots, weapons, and possibly thousands of scrolls. Chinese archaeologists discovered in 2010 that the terracotta warriors were originally painted in brilliant colors. Those colors oxidize and disappear within minutes of air exposure, which is why excavation has slowed. Mercury was believed to grant immortality in ancient China. Qin Shi Huang consumed mercury pills and likely died of mercury poisoning at age 49. Sima Qian wrote that the ceiling of the inner tomb chamber was decorated with pearls representing the stars and constellations. In 1987, the Qin tomb was designated a UNESCO World Heritage Site, ironically protecting it from excavation. Chinese archaeologists estimated in 2016 that with current technology, it would take 100-plus years to safely excavate the entire complex. The tomb is believed to contain copies of all books Qin Shi Huang ordered burned in 213 BC, texts on philosophy, medicine, and astronomy lost to history. The Chinese government and archaeological community argue that excavation technology isn't advanced enough to preserve the artifacts. The terracotta warriors demonstrated that exposure to air causes immediate deterioration. Mercury vapors pose serious health risks to excavation teams. Additionally, the tomb is a sacred site. Opening it would be culturally insensitive. Archaeology is patient. Better to wait 50 to 100 years for preservation technology than to destroy irreplaceable artifacts now. The terracotta army provides enough material for centuries of study. But if preservation is the concern, why haven't remote sensing technologies like fiber optic cameras been used to at least view the interior? Japan successfully used Muon radiography to image the Great Pyramid's hidden chambers in 2017. The same technology could map Qin's tomb without opening it. And mercury concerns don't explain why the Chinese government has forbidden even non-invasive imaging studies proposed by international teams. Some researchers suggest the tomb contains knowledge that would contradict the official history of Chinese civilization. Qin Shi Huang famously burned books and buried scholars alive to eliminate challenges to his authority. What if the tomb contains the very books he tried to destroy? Texts proving that Chinese philosophy, science, and medicine were far more advanced before his totalitarian purge. Others point to the mercury rivers. Ancient Chinese texts describe mercury as flowing like water in veins beneath mountains. Could Qin's engineers have discovered geothermal or hydraulic power? The automated crossbows Sima Qian described sound impossibly advanced for 210 BC, unless they weren't inventions, but preserved technology from an earlier era. The real question is whether the tomb is being protected, or whether its knowledge is being suppressed. From an emperor's sealed tomb, we turn to a library that vanished into the earth, a collection so legendary that treasure hunters have died searching for it. The Lost Library of Ivan the Terrible. In 1472, a young Russian prince married the niece of the last Byzantine emperor. Her dowry wasn't gold or jewels. It was a library, 800 ancient Greek and Latin manuscripts, lost works of Aristotle, Sophocles, and Virgil, texts looted from the Library of Alexandria before it burned, the most valuable collection of knowledge in the medieval world. The prince became Ivan the Terrible. The library disappeared, and for 500 years, people have died trying to find it. The library allegedly came to Moscow as part of the dowry of Sophia Paleolog when she married Grand Prince Ivan III in 1472. Her uncle, Constantine XI Palaeologus, was the last Byzantine emperor. When Constantinople fell to the Ottomans in 1453, imperial treasures were evacuated. Sophia brought them to Russia. Historical accounts from the 16th and 17th centuries describe Ivan IV, Ivan the Terrible, showing Greek manuscripts to visiting scholars and boasting about his secret library. After Ivan's death in 1584, references cease. The library was last mentioned in a 1724 account by Pastor Johann Vettermann, who claimed to have seen fragments. In 1556, Russian scholar and translator Maximus the Greek wrote that he had personally seen ancient Greek manuscripts in Ivan's possession that were unknown in Western Europe. In 1518, diplomat and scholar Francesco da Collo reported that Grand Prince Vasily III, Ivan IV's father, showed him Greek texts, including lost works of Livy and Polybius. Pastor Johann Vettermann claimed in 1724 that a dying Russian monk confessed the library was hidden in underground vaults beneath the Kremlin. Between 1894 and 1896, archaeologist Ignatius Stiletsky conducted extensive excavations under Moscow's Kremlin with permission from Tsar Nicholas II. He found underground passages, but no library. Stiletsky was arrested by the Soviet NKVD in 1933 and sent to a gulag for anti-Soviet agitation, specifically for continuing to search for the library without permission. In 1997, the Kremlin Museum issued a statement that exhaustive searches have proven the library does not exist, yet refused to release excavation records. Greek scholar Demetrios Chalkokondyles wrote in 1499 that Moscow possessed Greek manuscripts superior even to those in the Vatican. In 2006, ground-penetrating radar detected a large void beneath the Kremlin armory, but excavation was denied by Russian authorities. The estimated value of the library, if found, has been placed at $10 billion, plus, due to the presumed inclusion of lost classical works. A 1682 inventory of Kremlin treasures mentions Greek books in sealed chests, but provides no location. Historians argue the library likely never existed as described, or was destroyed in one of Moscow's frequent fires. The Kremlin burned in 1571 and 1626. Medieval accounts often exaggerated royal treasures. The manuscripts Sophia brought may have been dispersed among monasteries and private collections over centuries. Moscow's underground is riddled with natural caves and flooded passages. Any library hidden there would have rotted from moisture. The Soviet government's refusal to allow excavations was standard policy, not evidence of conspiracy. Modern archaeological consensus is that if the library existed, it was destroyed during the time of troubles, 1598 to 1613, when Moscow was repeatedly sacked. But why would multiple independent witnesses, Greek scholars, foreign diplomats, Russian monks, all describe the same collection if it didn't exist? Francesco da Collo wasn't some medieval fabulist. He was a papal diplomat whose reports to Rome were considered reliable. And the 2006 ground-penetrating radar void beneath the armory has never been explained. If the library is proven not to exist, why did the Kremlin refuse to release excavation records? Some researchers believe the library exists, but has been found and re-hidden. The Soviet NKVD's arrest of Stiletsky in 1933 is suspicious. Why imprison an archaeologist unless he was getting close? Others suggest the library was deliberately destroyed by the Russian Orthodox Church because it contained pre-Christian Greek texts that contradicted church doctrine. A darker theory asks what if the library was found during Soviet-era excavations, and Stalin ordered it sealed because the Greek philosophical texts contradicted Marxist ideology. The 1997 Kremlin statement that the library does not exist could be technically true if it was found, cataloged, and then sealed in a classified archive. From a library lost beneath the earth, we move to manuscripts hidden in plain sight. Scrolls that took longer to publish than they spent buried in the desert. Dead Sea Scrolls. Unpublished and restricted fragments. In 1947, a Bedouin shepherd threw a rock into a cave and heard something break. Inside, he found clay jars containing 2,000-year-old scrolls, the oldest known biblical manuscripts, texts that predated the official Bible by 1,000 years. Fragments that contradicted church doctrine. It would take 54 years before the public was allowed to see them all. And some fragments? They're still locked away. Between 1947 and 1956, shepherds and archaeologists discovered approximately 900 manuscripts in 11 caves near the ancient settlement of Qumran, overlooking the Dead Sea. The texts included biblical manuscripts, sectarian documents of the Essene Jewish community, and previously unknown apocryphal works. Carbon-14 dating and paleographic analysis confirmed they were written between 408 BC and 318 AD. Control of the scrolls fell to a small team of mostly Christian scholars led by Roland de Vaux, who implemented a publication monopoly that restricted access for decades. The initial editorial team, appointed in 1953, consisted of only 8 scholars, all male and mostly Catholic. They were given exclusive access to scroll fragments. By 1967, only 20% of the scrolls had been published. The team refused to release photographs or allow other scholars to examine unpublished materials. In 1991, the Biblical Archaeology Society broke the monopoly by publishing a pirated edition of the Huntington Library's complete photograph archive. Professor Geza Vermes of Oxford University wrote in 1977 that the delay was the academic scandal par excellence of the 20th century. Scroll 4 Q246, discovered in 1956, wasn't published until 1992, 36 years later, and contains a Son of God text that predates the Gospels. The War Scroll describes a cosmic battle between the sons of light and sons of darkness, a dualistic theology unusual for Second Temple Judaism. Fragment 4, Q285, published in 1992, contains a text some scholars interpret as describing a slain Messiah, contradicting the idea that crucified Messiah theology originated with Christianity. The Temple Scroll, the longest Dead Sea Scroll at 28 feet, describes temple architecture and purity laws that differ significantly from Pharisaic Judaism. In 2010, Israeli authorities investigated Norwegian scholar Jürgen Flink for allegedly smuggling unpublished scroll fragments. Some fragments remain in private collections and are unavailable for study. As of 2024, an estimated 5 to 10% of scroll fragments have never been photographed or published, according to researchers at the Israel Antiquities Authority. The publication delay was due to the sheer volume and fragility of the materials. The scrolls were fragmentary, over 15,000 pieces, requiring painstaking reassembly. The original team was understaffed and underfunded. Political instability, the 1967 Six-Day War, disrupted work. The scroll's importance wasn't fully understood until later. The 1991 publication scandal forced transparency, and since then, nearly all materials have been made available. Remaining restrictions protect extremely fragile fragments that require specialized conservation. There's no conspiracy, just the slow pace of academic work on delicate ancient materials. But the scrolls were photographed completely by infrared camera in the 1950s. Publishing photographs requires no physical access to fragile originals. Why then did it take until 1991, 40 years after photography, to release images? And if the team was understaffed, why did they refuse help from dozens of qualified scholars who volunteered? Dr. Norman Golb of the University of Chicago argued in Who Wrote the Dead Sea Scrolls in 1995 that the monopoly was maintained precisely because certain texts threatened the Christian theological narrative. Some researchers argue the scrolls were suppressed because they contained alternative forms of early Judaism and Christianity. The Son of God fragment predates Jesus, suggesting the title wasn't unique to Christianity. Fragment 4, Q285's Slain Messiah, implies that Jewish messianic expectation already included a suffering figure, undermining the claim that Jesus' crucifixion was unexpected. The dualistic theology of the War Scroll resembles Gnostic Christianity, which the Church declared heretical. If these ideas existed in pre-Christian Judaism, the entire narrative of Christian uniqueness collapses. Others point to Vatican involvement. Father Roland Deveau, the team leader, was a Dominican priest. Was the Catholic Church controlling what texts reached the public? The 1991 publication only occurred after media pressure, suggesting the monopoly would have continued indefinitely otherwise. From scrolls locked in academic control, we climb to a mountain where women have been forbidden for 1,000 years, and where libraries hold secrets even the monks haven't read. Mount Athos Monastery Libraries. Imagine an entire peninsula where time stopped in the year 1000 AD. 20 monasteries perched on cliffs above the Aegean Sea. 10,000 ancient manuscripts in a dozen languages, and a law that forbids half the human race from ever setting foot on the land. Welcome to Mount Athos, where women have been banned for over 1,000 years, and where the libraries contain texts that have never been fully cataloged, never been digitized, and may never be seen by outside scholars. Mount Athos became a monastic center in 963 AD when Saint Athanasius, the Athonite, founded the Great Lavra Monastery. Over the next millennium, 20 Orthodox monasteries were established, each building extensive libraries. The Athonite ban on females, the Avaton, was officially codified in a 1046 Byzantine imperial decree, extended even to female animals. The peninsula became an autonomous monastic state within Greece in 1926. Access requires a special permit, the Diamonaterion, limited to 100 Orthodox men and 10 non-Orthodox men per day. Women are prohibited by both religious law and Greek civil law. Mount Athos libraries collectively hold an estimated 10,000 plus manuscripts, including Greek, Latin, Syriac, Arabic, Georgian, and Slavonic texts. The Great Lavra Library alone contains approximately 2,046 manuscripts and 20,000 printed books. In 2008, researchers discovered a previously unknown 10th century manuscript of Archimedes' Method of Mechanical Theorems in the Vatopedi Monastery Library. The monasteries also house approximately 100,000 Ottoman-era documents from when Mount Athos was under Turkish rule, 1430 to 1912. Access to the libraries requires not only the Diamonaterion permit, but also specific permission from each monastery's abbot. Some monasteries reject all research requests. Female scholars, including Byzantinists and Orthodox theologians, are permanently barred. This policy is enforced by Greek police, with fines and arrest. In 2003, the European Parliament condemned the female ban as discriminatory, but Greece responded that Mount Athos's autonomous religious status exempts it from EU equality laws. In 2008, 4 Moldovan women attempted to enter disguised as men. They were arrested, fined €1,000 each, and deported. Many manuscripts are stored in damp, unheated cells. A 2013 UNESCO report warned of deterioration due to inadequate conservation. The monasteries have rejected multiple digitization projects from institutions like Harvard's Center for Hellenic Studies, claiming digital copies would dilute the sacred nature of the texts. Mount Athos is a living religious community, not a public library. The Avaton is a spiritual practice dating to the Virgin Mary's supposed blessing of the peninsula. Monks believe she is the only woman who should ever be present. The restriction isn't about discrimination. It's about creating an environment for male monasticism, free from sexual distraction, a practice also found in certain Buddhist monasteries. The manuscripts are the monastery's private property. Scholars who respect the religious rules are granted access. Digitization is rejected because the monks believe physical presence before holy texts is part of spiritual study. No texts are being deliberately suppressed. They're simply being preserved in their traditional context. But religious freedom doesn't explain why manuscripts of non-religious content, Ottoman tax records, Greek classical philosophy, medical texts, are also restricted. Why should a 12th century copy of Aristotle's Poetics require monastic permission to study? And the spiritual practice argument collapses when you realize that until the 1970s, female animals were also banned. A prohibition silently dropped when it became economically impractical. If that rule could change, why not human access? Some scholars suggest the female ban and research restrictions serve to maintain theological control. Mount Athos libraries may contain early Christian texts that contradict Orthodox doctrine. Pre-schism documents before the 1054 split between Catholic and Orthodox churches might show that Byzantine Christianity was more diverse than official history admits. Others point to the Archimedes discovery. If a monumental mathematical text sat unnoticed for 1,000 years, what else is moldering unknown? The monastery's rejection of digitization is particularly suspicious. If the concern is preservation, digital copies would reduce handling of fragile originals. The real fear may be that outside scholars would notice contradictions, forgeries, or suppressed works that the monastic community prefers to keep hidden. From a mountain library that refuses the outside world, we descend into the basement of an institution that claims to embrace it, yet keeps 99% of its collection locked away. The British Museum, basement vaults, and storage facilities. Walk through the British Museum, and you'll see the Rosetta Stone, the Elgin marbles, Egyptian mummies under glass. But for every object on display, there are 99 locked in the basement. 8 million artifacts, Egyptian papyri in unmarked boxes, cuneiform tablets that haven't been read since they were excavated in 1850. A hoard so vast that the museum itself admits it has no idea what it owns. And here's the thing, you will never see any of it. The British Museum was founded in 1753 based on the collection of Sir Hans Sloane. Over 270 years, it accumulated objects through purchase, donation, and colonial acquisition. Major expansions occurred during the 19th century as British archaeological expeditions excavated sites in Egypt, Mesopotamia, Greece, and Rome. The museum's policy has always been to accept all materials offered, leading to a massive backlog. In 2013, the museum admitted that approximately 1 to 2% of its total collection is on public display at any time. The rest is stored in the museum's basement, in Blythe House, a former postal building, and in a purpose-built facility near London's Olympic Park. The British Museum's total collection is estimated at 8 million objects, though this is an approximation. Complete cataloging has never been achieved. The Egyptian and Sudan Department alone holds approximately 140,000 objects. Fewer than 4% are on public display. In 2009, researchers discovered an uncatalogued cache of 2,000 plus cuneiform tablets from the 1850s. Excavations of Nineveh in a basement storeroom. Many objects were acquired during the 19th century scramble for antiquities, when entire archaeological sites were shipped to London with minimal documentation. The museum employs approximately 1,000 staff, but only a fraction work in curation and research. It would take an estimated 200 plus years to fully catalog the backlog at current staffing levels. In 2003, investigative journalists from the art newspaper revealed that approximately 2,000 objects from the museum's collection have been lost or stolen over decades, including Greek pottery, Egyptian scarabs, and Roman coins. Access to storage facilities requires researcher credentials, appointment scheduling months in advance, and explicit justification. Casual browsing is impossible. In 2013, the museum admitted that hundreds of Egyptian papyri fragments have never been examined by scholars because they're stored in boxes without inventory labels. The British Museum's digitization project, launched in 1999, has cataloged approximately 4.5 million objects as of 2024, meaning 3.5 million remain unrecorded digitally. Off-site storage at Blythe House closed in 2023, forcing relocation of 250,000 objects to the Olympic Park facility, leading to further access delays. The British Museum is a victim of its own success. It was designed as an encyclopedic collection, accepting donations and acquisitions that other institutions rejected. The backlog is a staffing and funding issue, not a conspiracy. Cataloging 8 million objects requires specialized expertise. Egyptologists, Assyriologists, classicists, and such scholars are rare and expensive. The museum is committed to transparency and has made its online catalog freely available. Storage restrictions are necessary to preserve fragile artifacts. Unrestricted public access would cause damage. The museum welcomes researchers and processes thousands of access requests annually. But other major museums, the Louvre, the Met, the Smithsonian, have managed to digitally catalog their collections. Why hasn't the British Museum, with a £100+ million annual budget, hired enough staff to finish the job in 25 years of digitization effort? And the preservation argument doesn't explain why cataloging isn't happening. You don't need to put objects on display to photograph and list them. Some critics argue the British Museum's backlog is strategically maintained. As long as objects remain uncatalogued, the museum can claim ignorance when countries demand repatriation. Greece has asked for the Parthenon marbles. Egypt wants mummies and obelisks. Nigeria demands Benin bronzes. But if thousands of other contested objects remain unknown in storage, they can't be claimed. The 2009 discovery of 2,000 uncatalogued Nineveh tablets is revealing. These were taken during the British excavation of Assyrian palaces, an excavation that shipped 20,000 objects to London. What happened to the other 18,000? Others suggest the storage vaults contain embarrassing duplicates, fakes, or items acquired through outright theft that the museum would prefer not to acknowledge. The backlog isn't a bug, it's a feature. From a Western institution hoarding knowledge, we turn to an Eastern library that has guarded its secrets for 1,000 years, and where access depends on your religion. Al-Azhar Library, Restricted Sections. In the year 988, a library was built in Cairo to preserve the knowledge of the Islamic world. Medicine, astronomy, mathematics, the sciences that would later fuel the European Renaissance. But this library wasn't open to all. It had rules, Muslim scholars only. No photography, no digital copies, and certain rooms, even Muslim scholars couldn't enter without special permission. For over 1,000 years, Al-Azhar has guarded its texts, and much of what it holds has never been seen by Western eyes. Al-Azhar University was founded in 970 AD as a center of Islamic learning. Its library was established in 988 AD and became one of the great repositories of Arabic scholarship, comparable to Baghdad's House of Wisdom. The collection includes Quranic manuscripts, Islamic legal texts, scientific treatises, and pre-Islamic Arabic literature. During the Crusades and Mongol invasions, many scholars fled to Cairo, bringing manuscripts that would have otherwise been destroyed. The library survived the Ottoman period and British colonial rule, but access has always been restricted to Muslim scholars. Al-Azhar Library holds an estimated 45,000 plus manuscripts, though complete cataloging has never been published. The library contains approximately 250,000 printed books in Arabic, Persian, Turkish, and Urdu. Access is officially restricted to Muslim scholars with credentials from recognized Islamic universities. Non-Muslims can apply for special permission, but approval is rare. A 2007 UNESCO report noted that significant portions of Al-Azhar's collection have never been microfilmed or digitized. The library holds one of the oldest extant Quranic manuscripts, dated to the 8th century, within 100 years of Muhammad's death. In 2015, Egyptian authorities quietly transferred approximately 200 manuscripts to a secure facility after concerns about theft. Their current location is undisclosed. The library's catalog, published in 1946 through 1952, lists only 20,000 manuscripts, meaning 25,000 plus acquired since then remain uncatalogued. Western researchers attempting to access the collection report, waiting 6+ months for permission. Many requests are denied without explanation. In 1997, scholar Jonathan Bloom discovered an uncatalogued 10th century manuscript on papermaking, one of the earliest Arabic discussions of paper technology. The library's closed stacks, restricted even to credentialed Muslim scholars, reportedly contain pre-Islamic Arabic texts and esoteric Sufi manuscripts. No public catalog of these materials exists. Al-Azhar is an Islamic religious institution, not a secular library. Restricting access to Muslim scholars ensures the texts are interpreted correctly and respectfully. Many manuscripts contain theological arguments that could be misunderstood or misrepresented by non-Muslims. The library is underfunded. It lacks staff for extensive cataloging and digitization. The 2015 transfer of manuscripts was for security after a series of thefts from Egyptian museums. Western scholars have access to Islamic texts in other libraries, the British Library, Bibliothèque Nationale de France. Al-Azhar's restrictions are about religious authority, not suppression of knowledge. But the library contains non-religious texts, medical manuals, astronomical charts, pre-Islamic poetry. Why should a 9th century Arabic translation of Aristotle require Islamic credentials to study? And the religious respect argument is undermined by the fact that even Muslim scholars from Shia or Sufi traditions report difficulty accessing certain materials. If it's about Islam, why does Sunni orthodoxy control who counts as Muslim enough? Some researchers believe Al-Azhar's restrictions protect texts that challenge modern Islamic orthodoxy. Pre-Islamic Arabic literature contains references to polytheism and beliefs that contradict the narrative of Arabia as spiritually barren before Islam. Sufi esoteric texts in the closed stacks may contain ideas, pantheism, divine immanence, that conservative Sunni authorities consider heretical. Others point to the Islamic Golden Age scientific texts. If widely disseminated, they would show that medieval Islamic science was more advanced than anything in medieval Europe, contradicting Western narratives of progress. The 2015 secure transfer is particularly suspicious. Were manuscripts really stolen, or were they removed because their contents were problematic? From a library guarded by religious law, we journey to a vault sealed by secular law, and by a curse that has claimed lives. Padmanabha Swami, Temple Vault B. In 2011, the Indian Supreme Court ordered the opening of secret vaults beneath the Padmanabha Swami Temple. Inside vaults A, C, D, E, and F, they found $22 billion in gold, jewels, and artifacts, the largest temple treasure ever discovered. But there was a 7th vault, Vault B. It was sealed with an iron door bearing no lock, no handle, no hinges. Only a serpent emblem and a warning. The priests said opening it would bring catastrophe. The Supreme Court agreed. Vault B has never been opened. The Padmanabhaswamy Temple, dedicated to Vishnu, dates to the 8th century, though the current structure was built in the 18th century by the Maharajas of Travancore. the temple vaults were rumored to contain treasures donated by kings over centuries. In 2011, the Kerala High Court ordered an inventory after a public interest lawsuit alleged mismanagement. When vaults A, C, D, E, and F were opened in June through July 2011, the treasure included 1 ton of gold coins dated to the East India Company era, thousands of pieces of antique jewelry, some set with diamonds and emeralds, a solid gold idol of Vishnu, 4 feet tall, encrusted with rubies, Napoleon-era gold coins, Roman coins, and Venetian ducats. But Vault B remained sealed. It is located beneath the Sanctum Sanctorum and has no visible lock mechanism. Temple priests and the Travancore royal family filed a petition arguing that opening Vault B would violate religious tradition and invite divine wrath. The Supreme Court agreed, issuing an indefinite stay on opening Vault B in 2011. The 6 open vaults contained items valued at approximately $22 billion as of 2024 estimates, making it the richest temple in the world. Vault B is marked with the image of 2 cobras and a yakshi, a spirit guardian. According to temple tradition, it can only be opened by a sadhana, a spiritual ritual, performed by a specially trained priest. In 1931, a team of temple workers attempted to open Vault B during routine maintenance. According to temple records, they reported hearing hissing sounds and fled. 2 died of snakebite within a week. In 2011, ground-penetrating radar suggested Vault B may extend 3 stories underground, far deeper than the other vaults. The iron door has no visible lock, handle, or hinge mechanism. Metallurgical analysis in 2013 confirmed it is a single, solid piece of iron, possibly forged in place. Audio recording devices placed near Vault B in 2011 allegedly captured faint water sounds, suggesting the vault may be flooded or contain an underground spring. In 2014, a petition to open Vault B was filed by historian T.P. Sundara Rajan, who argued that it may contain historical records of the Travancore kingdom. The Supreme Court rejected the petition. Temple legends claim Vault B contains Naga wealth, serpent treasure, guarded by supernatural forces. Disturbing it would cause earthquakes, floods, and plagues. Structural engineers consulted in 2011 warned that the vault may be a load-bearing structure. Opening it could destabilize the temple above. As of 2024, Vault B remains sealed. The Supreme Court's stay order has been extended indefinitely. Vault B is likely a structural element, not a treasure vault. The iron door may be decorative or seal a now empty chamber. The curse is a post hoc rationalization by priests to prevent scrutiny of temple finances. The 1931 snakebite deaths were coincidental. Cobras are common in Kerala. The Supreme Court's stay order reflects respect for religious freedom under India's constitution, not belief in curses. Opening the vault could damage the temple structure, a UNESCO-worthy heritage site. The treasure already discovered is sufficient for historical study. There's no urgent need to risk structural collapse for speculation. But ground-penetrating radar showed the vault extends 3 stories down. Why build such a structure if it's empty? And the iron door's seamless construction is unexplained. If it's just decorative, how is it installed with no visible joints? The Supreme Court's deference to religious tradition is inconsistent. Indian courts have overridden religious practices in other cases, temple entry for women. Why is Vault B different? Some researchers believe Vault B contains artifacts that would rewrite South Indian history. The Travancore Kingdom maintained diplomatic and trade relations with the Roman Empire, China, and the Middle East. The vault may hold records of these contacts, evidence of advanced navigation, astronomy, or engineering. Others suggest the vault contains pre-Hindu religious artifacts. Kerala has a documented history of Jainism, Buddhism, and even Judaism. The Cochin Jews date to the 1st century AD. If Vault B contains evidence of non-Hindu religious primacy, it would challenge Hindu nationalist narratives. The curse may be a later invention to prevent discovery of inconvenient truths. Alternatively, the vault may contain wealth that, if disclosed, would raise questions about temple finances and taxation, a secular reason to keep it closed. From a vault sealed by law and legend in India, we cross to Spain, where an emperor built a library to hold the forbidden knowledge of three religions. Real Biblioteca del Monasterio de El Escorial, Forbidden Chambers. In 1565, King Philip II of Spain built a monastery, palace, and library unlike anything Europe had ever seen. 40,000 books and manuscripts. Arabic texts looted from Granada. Hebrew manuscripts confiscated during the Inquisition. Greek philosophy banned by the Church. All gathered in one place, not to share, but to control. And in the deepest rooms of El Escorial, behind locked doors, are shelves the public has never seen. Books deemed too dangerous to read. Philip II, who lived from 1527 to 1598, envisioned El Escorial as the intellectual and spiritual center of the Spanish Empire. He commissioned it in 1563 and established the library in 1565, hiring scholars to collect manuscripts from across Europe, the Middle East, and the Americas. The library's architect, Juan de Herrera, designed it with a magnificent frescoed hall to display approved texts, but also with secure backrooms for restricted materials. After the fall of Granada in 1492 and the expulsion or forced conversion of Jews and Muslims, Spanish authorities confiscated thousands of Arabic and Hebrew manuscripts. Many were burned, but Philip ordered the useful ones preserved in El Escorial, locked away from heretical influence, but available to approved scholars for study. El Escorial's library holds approximately 40,000 printed books and 4,700 manuscripts, making it one of the richest collections of Renaissance-era texts. The library contains approximately 2,000 Arabic manuscripts and 200 Hebrew manuscripts, most confiscated during the Reconquista and Inquisition. Among the Arabic texts are scientific treatises on medicine, astronomy, and mathematics, works that influenced the European Renaissance but were banned as Moorish sorcery. The restricted backrooms, closed to public tours, house the Index Librorum Prohibitorum collection, books banned by the Catholic Church, including works by Copernicus, Galileo, and Protestant reformers. In 1671, a fire destroyed part of the library. Historical accounts suggest some monks deliberately removed certain Arabic manuscripts before the fire, fueling rumors they were hidden rather than burned. Access to the restricted sections requires written permission from the monastery's prior and the Spanish Ministry of Culture. Approval is rarely granted. In 1984, UNESCO listed El Escorial as a World Heritage Site, but the restricted sections were exempt from mandatory cataloging. A 2005 study by Arabic scholar Celia Del Moral discovered that approximately 300 Arabic manuscripts in the collection have never been fully translated or published. The library's catalog, last updated in 1992, does not include a complete inventory of the restricted chambers. In 2017, a Spanish journalist requested access to photograph the restricted sections. The request was denied on grounds of preservation concerns, though the main library allows photography. Philip II collected Arabic and Hebrew texts for scholarly study, not suppression. He funded translation projects to extract useful knowledge, medicine, astronomy, while preventing heretical theology from spreading. The restricted sections contain fragile manuscripts that require climate control. Public access would cause deterioration. The fire of 1671 destroyed many sensitive materials, so what remains is carefully protected. Modern restrictions are about preservation, not censorship. Researchers with legitimate academic purposes are granted access. The monastery is a functioning religious community. Some areas are naturally private, but the library allows photography in the main hall, where manuscripts are equally fragile. Why are the back rooms different? And if Philip wanted scholarly study, why did he restrict access even to Catholic scholars? Records show that several Spanish inquisitors requested permission to study Arabic alchemical texts and were denied. What were they not allowed to see? Some historians believe El Escorial's restricted sections contain texts that would challenge Catholic orthodoxy. Arabic manuscripts from Al-Andalus, Islamic Spain, describe Christian-Muslim-Jewish scholarly collaboration, a convivencia, coexistence, that the post-Reconquista narrative tried to erase. If publicized, these texts would show that medieval Spain was intellectually vibrant precisely because of its religious diversity, not despite it. Others point to the Hebrew manuscripts. Jewish Kabbalistic texts contain esoteric theology that influenced Christian mysticism. But admitting that the Church's mystical traditions came from Judaism would undermine claims of Christian superiority. The 1671 fire is also suspicious. Did monks really save manuscripts? And if so, where are they now? There are persistent rumors of a hidden chamber beneath the library, where the most dangerous texts were sealed. From a library built to contain knowledge, we end at a place where knowledge must be hidden by law, a tomb protected by an entire nation. The forbidden zone of Genghis Khan's tomb and the lost Mongol archives. When Genghis Khan died in 1227, his soldiers killed everyone they encountered on the journey to his burial site. Witnesses, villagers, even the gravediggers were executed after filling the tomb. A forest was planted over it. A river was diverted across it. And then the Mongol Empire passed a law. Anyone who searches for the tomb will be executed. That law is still in effect. Today, it's called the Great Taboo, and the Mongolian government enforces it. The greatest conqueror in history lies in an unmarked grave, and his library, the records of an empire that stretched from Korea to Hungary, may be buried with him. Genghis Khan died in August 1227, likely in the Khanty Mountains of northern Mongolia. According to the secret history of the Mongols, written circa 1240, he was buried in an unmarked location with vast treasures and possibly the records of his conquests. The funeral procession killed everyone along the route to ensure secrecy. Horses were ridden over the burial site to obscure it, and some accounts say a river was diverted to flow over it. Mongolian tradition forbids searching for the tomb, a prohibition that has evolved into a modern protected zone enforced by the government. In 1993, the Mongolian government designated a 10,900 square kilometer area in the Khanty Mountains as the Great Burkun Khaldun Mountain Protected Zone. Archaeological excavation is prohibited by law. In 2001, the zone was expanded and listed as a UNESCO World Heritage Site under the designation Sacred Landscape, one of the few UNESCO sites where research is legally banned. Between 2000 and 2004, a joint Mongolian-Japanese archaeological team, led by Dr. Shin Miyake, conducted non-invasive surveys using ground-penetrating radar and satellite imagery. They identified a 13th century structure, but were denied excavation permits. In 2015, the University of California San Diego team claimed to have located a potential tomb site using satellite imagery and crowdsourced analysis. The Mongolian government declared the area off-limits within 48 hours. Mongolian law, Article 14.1 of the Law on Protection of Historical and Cultural Monuments from 1994, explicitly prohibits disturbance of sacred sites associated with Genghis Khan. Violators face fines up to $10,000 and potential imprisonment. In 2016, 2 Chinese archaeologists were arrested and deported for unauthorized surveying. According to the secret history of the Mongols, Genghis Khan was buried with treasures, horses, and the books of his campaigns, suggesting a library or archive may be in the tomb. In 2017, Mongolian President Khaltmagin Batulga stated that the tomb of Genghis Khan will remain undiscovered as long as Mongolia exists as a nation. Genghis Khan's empire produced extensive administrative records, the Blue Notebook and other registries, but most were destroyed when the Yuan dynasty fell in 1368. Some scholars believe copies were buried with Genghis. In 2019, ground-penetrating radar detected a large underground structure in the Khanty region, but the government refused to release the data publicly. Mongolians view Genghis Khan's tomb as sacred, Disturbing it would violate cultural and spiritual traditions that have been maintained for 800 years. The tomb's secrecy is part of the reverence for Genghis. By leaving it undiscovered, Mongols honor his wish for eternal peace. The government's protection isn't about suppressing knowledge. It's about respecting indigenous cultural autonomy. Mongolia has the right to determine how its heritage is treated. The tomb likely contains burial goods, but no significant historical records. Those would have been kept in Karakoram, the capital. Modern Mongolia's economy depends on tourism and national identity tied to Genghis Khan. Discovering the tomb would commodify it and diminish its sacred status. But Mongolia actively promotes Genghis Khan tourism. His face is on currency, statues dominate Ulaanbaatar, and museums celebrate his legacy. If commercialization were the concern, the government wouldn't allow that. And the sacred tradition argument doesn't explain why non-invasive satellite surveys are prohibited. You don't need to dig to map a site. Why ban even imaging technology? Some historians believe the tomb contains records that would challenge the official history of the Mongol Empire. Genghis Khan united the Mongol tribes through diplomacy, marriage alliances, and strategic brutality. But the secret history only tells the story his descendants wanted preserved. What if the tomb contains Genghis's own account, contradicting the heroic narrative? Others suggest the tomb holds evidence of Mongol technological advancement. Marco Polo wrote that the Mongols used gunpowder weapons, advanced siege engines, and possibly even primitive flying machines, likely kites or gliders. If the tomb contains engineering diagrams or prototypes, it would show that the Mongols weren't just warriors, but innovators. The darkest theory asks, what if the Mongolian government already found the tomb in secret, removed valuable items, and now maintains the sacred taboo to cover the looting? The 2019 refusal to release ground-penetrating radar data suggests they're hiding something. So here's what we've seen. The Vatican, with 53 miles of documents it won't let you read. A Chinese tomb that might kill you if you open it. A lost Byzantine library buried under Moscow. Scrolls that took 44 years to publish despite being photographed in the 1950s. A mountain where women are banned by law. A museum that admits it's lost track of its own collection. A library that checks your religion at the door. A vault sealed by a Supreme Court because of a curse. A monastery that hides the spoils of the Inquisition. And a tomb protected by an entire nation's law. These aren't isolated anomalies. They're a pattern. And the pattern is this. The most important archives in human history are the ones we're not allowed to see. The official story is always the same. Preservation, funding, respect for tradition, fragile materials, privacy concerns, security risks. And you know what? Some of that is true. These are real challenges. But here's the thing that doesn't add up. We have the technology to solve every one of these problems. We can digitize without touching. We can image underground chambers without digging. We can catalog 8 million objects in a fraction of the time it's taking. The tools exist, but the access doesn't. What does it mean that the institutions we trust to preserve the past are the same ones controlling who gets to see it? Libraries that restrict by religion, museums that hide 99% of their collections, governments that enforce 800-year-old prohibitions with modern law, courts that defer to curses. This isn't about protecting history. It's about controlling the narrative. Because if you control the archives, you control the story. And if you control the story, you decide what's true. Most people walk past the British Museum and think they've seen history. They accept the Vatican's transparency and move on. They trust that experts are working on the Dead Sea Scrolls. They believe the official explanations. But you're not most people. You made it this far. You watched all 10. You understand something they don't. That every locked door is an admission that there's something worth hiding. This channel exists for people who refuse to accept that's just how it is. People who see a 75-year restriction rule and ask, why not 30? People who notice that the archives most protected are the ones that could rewrite our understanding of religion, empire, and knowledge itself. So here's what I want you to do. Go to the comments and tell me which of these 10 archives you think contains the most dangerous knowledge. Not the most valuable, not the most mysterious, the most dangerous. The one that, if open tomorrow, would change what we think we know about history. Make your case. Defend it. Convince the rest of us. And then hit subscribe, because we're just getting started. There are more sealed doors, more restricted collections, more forbidden knowledge, and we're going to find it. They told Genghis Khan's funeral procession to kill every witness. They sealed the Vatican vaults with miles of shelves and decades of waiting. They banned women from an entire mountain and forbade scholars from a religion. The archives aren't lost. They never were. They're just locked. And every lock is a confession. Hit subscribe. You know why.